You're having technical trouble.
Yeah. Right, okay, I think I'm back online. Hopefully. Is there anybody out there? If there is, good morning. My name's Kevin Williams. I run survival skills rider training based here in London. Looking out the window at the moment, it's a lovely, lovely sunny day. Warm, blue sky, not a cloud in it, and almost complete silence out there today. It's very, very quiet for reasons that we're all obviously going to be familiar with, and unfortunately for the next few weeks, possibly months, we're going to have to get used to. A lot of us being confined to barracks, as a friend of mine put it the other day. So what can we do? Really, all we can do is make the most of it. So what am I going to do about that? Obviously, on a day like today, normally I would hopefully be out there on the motorcycle myself, running a training course. I'd have somebody else out there with me, and we'd be out on the roads enjoying the sun, making the most of what is a glorious early spring day. But the bike's parked. The bike is sawned from the end of this month, and I don't think I'm going to be doing any real-time training out there on the bike anytime soon. So how can we make the most of the situation? Well, obviously it occurred to me that something I could do would be to create a live broadcast stream. Whether or not this is working is a little bit difficult to tell at the moment, but hopefully somebody somewhere out there is watching, and I believe, if I've got the Facebook instructions correct, this should be recording, so it should go up on my Facebook page as a recording at some point in the near future anyway. So what am I going to use these slots to talk about? What am I going to say to you? Well, I'm going to try and give you some topical news. We're obviously pinned down, some of us are still lucky enough to be using our bikes to commute backwards and forwards in essential jobs, but most of us really are going to have to knuckle down and get used to being not locked away exactly, but certainly under close confinement for the next few weeks. So I'm going to try and keep you updated on what's going on in the world of motorcycling. There are still news stories happening out there, so I will look at those. I'll talk a little bit as well about my motorcycle training and how that works. And one of the things I'll be introducing to you to is my e-learning course, which I'm going to be introducing. Literally, I'm working on this flat out now to try and get the first module up and running, hopefully this evening. Open it up, so there's an option on my website for you to click on and pre-register for that, and I'll get that sorted out as soon as I can, and then we can talk about that in a moment too. So what do I want to talk a little bit about today? Well, I've got a couple of stories for you that I just wanted to look at very quickly. The first thing to say is that the latest news, which you may or may not have discovered yet, is that from March the 30th, all MOTs will be automatically extended by 6 months. The reasons for that are obvious. It's to stop people having to take their bike or car or van or whatever to an MOT station in the first place. But the other reason is undoubtedly to free up resources for people working within the essential services to get their vehicles MOT'd. Well, they probably won't need an MOT if it's extended 6 months, but to get it serviced, get it fixed if that becomes necessary at some point. So if your MOT happens to fall between now and the 30th of March, I'm afraid you still have to go and get that vehicle MOT'd. But once beyond that date, then everything is extended for 6 months, which is probably a very good idea. Okay, that's the first story I wanted to look at. Next one I just wanted to talk about briefly is what's going on at Norton. Now, if you have been following the story like me with some interest over the last couple of years, Norton came out with a beautiful looking product. You know, if you're into classic style motorcycles, then I have to say that the Norton looks very pretty. Last saw it at one of the bike shows a couple of years ago, and it was glorious in the flesh. You know, even better, I would say, than it looked in the pictures. However, the production of Norton bikes has been rife with problems. Overshoots on deliveries, people putting money down and not getting the bike that they were promised. You can go into the interweb and you can run a search on Norton, and you can find out just how unhappy people have been with the service. However, it appears to go somewhat deeper than that. Now, this is anecdotal. I will admit that I'm relying on somebody else who knows somebody else, but there have been problems in the US as well. Now, I'm told that the Norton that was submitted to the California EPS, the Environmental Protection Service, I think they are, actually blew up on the test bed, which doesn't actually inspire an awful lot of confidence. And there have been stories on, again, on forums online, people who've taken delivery of the new machines, only to discover that they exhibit all the worst characteristics of a 1960s British motorcycle and deposit oil everywhere, which again isn't actually very suggestive of a system which is putting together quality motorcycles, which is a bit of a disappointment. It has to be said at that price point. But things have got worse. There are stories coming out of a lot of financial improprieties. Quick sip of my mug. The latest story is all about what's happened with pension funds, and the story that's just come out online is that the insurer, which is one of the ombudsmen, this is a story that's in the Guardian at the moment. The ombudsman who looks after the pensions, the regulator and investigator, have found that the former boss of Norton Motorcycles, Stuart Garner, who apparently recently resigned and handed over control of the organisation to his wife, has been investigated, and they are looking at some serious financial improprieties. Now, what will happen from this point forward is anybody's guess, but what I can say is if you want to read a little bit more about what's been going on, the Guardian have had some very good articles online about Norton, so it's worth just Googling Guardian and Norton. But the other place you can go and read some interesting stories is Superbike Magazine's online site. They have interviewed a couple of people who have had connections with Stuart Garner and Norton in the past, and the stories that they're telling are fairly horrible things to read. Now, obviously, I stress that everything here is unsubstantiated. We're still relying on other people's words about what happened, so I'm not making any accusations myself. I'm simply pointing you in the direction of a news story that you can go and look at. Okay, so Norton, yes, not particularly good news out there for them. Now, okay, a little bit again about what I'm intending to do with these sort of webcasts. The plan is to be online for about 30 minutes, no more than that, because you'll undoubtedly get bored with me talking to you. So I'll try and keep it fairly short and sweet. But at the moment, the plan is to go online, Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, and Sundays too if I'm around and about, and I probably will be, looking at the situation as it is, and just give you about 30 minutes worth of news and views, and as I say, a little bit of talk about what I'm doing to keep myself entertained with motorcycle training over the next few months, and to give you some tips on how you can use your downtime to improve your own riding. For example, one of the things I'll tell you about are some of the books in my library, and I have a fairly extensive library in the spare room. The shelves are groaning under the weight. Actually, I'm worried they're going to topple down on somebody's head in the bed in one day, so I might have to take them all down and find somewhere else to store them. I can talk about my training courses, some of my methods, some of the ways that I know the approaches that I use are supposed to work in terms of delivering learning to people. So I can hopefully use the time to give you some insights into my work. And of course, I can give you some tips that you can use yourself and take away. And, you know, when we get back into biking again, maybe they'll help you progress forward. Maybe you'll remember some of the things that I've talked about over the years. Okay, so the next project that as I say I'm looking at is the e-learning course. Now, e-learning sounds a bit out there really, doesn't it? But it's actually got a very long history. I was actually surprised. I did a little bit of research myself to find out just how long e-learning has been going on. My guess was probably the 1920s or 30s, when I was thinking, you know, that was when the big education revolution was, when schooling for all came about. But in fact, no, it was beyond 1920s, 1930s and correspondence courses. It went back to the previous century, not just the 1890s. It went all the way back to the mid 1850s, when people were running correspondence courses to teach shorthand skills. You may have heard of somebody called Pitman and the Pitman's shorthand scheme. Well, he was running a correspondence course in the 1850s apparently, but before that there was an American in Boston running a correspondence course for his own shorthand scheme, and that apparently is the very first correspondence course that anybody knows about. That is fairly astonishing. It's almost 200 years ago. So the idea of learning at a distance from an instructor certainly isn't a new one. I, in fact, have an NVQ in distance learning, which I qualified for via distance learning myself. I sat at home on my computer and I ran through a series of exercises and presented reports to the tutor. We got feedback, we had chat sessions, we had essays that were marked, we had other exercises to do. So, you know, I do have some experience on this. I do have some previous, and I can see that there are areas that we can use distance learning to help with motorcycle skills. Now, I know a lot of people are still very skeptical about that, but think about it. If you have ever read an article in a magazine and thought, oh yeah, that's a good idea, then you have used distance learning. You've experienced distance learning. If you've read a book on something and learned something from the book, that is distance learning. Somebody at a remote point has written that article and fed it forward to you, and that is distance learning, when you pick up on their skill set, their knowledge, and you incorporate it into what you're already doing. So even though motorcycling is a very practical subject, obviously, you know, there are a lot of things that we do which can only be done out there on the road. There's still an awful lot that we can learn from books, from magazine articles, from articles that I write on the internet. And if we can learn from that, we can learn from a structured e-learning course. And so that's how I'm intending to put the course together. It'll be broken down into manageable chunks. There will be different ways of delivering that information. I'm not going to be able to get many of you out there and actually riding the bike and trying the practical exercises that I normally would suggest, but it's stuff that you can store away. You can put it into the memory banks. you can just make recordings if you want to. You can write the stuff down. You'll have access to it after the course is finished, so you can come back to it when finally we're allowed to go back out on the roads. And anything that helps us keep sane over what's going to be, I think, fairly stressful time for all of us, I think it's a good idea. And it gives us something to look forward to the time when we do get back out there on the bike and we're free to do our riding again. What's not to like? That's all I can say. I do need to make a small charge for this, I have to be honest. My income stream, as you've probably imagined, is my practical training. That's by far and away the largest income that I have, and of course that dried up with the coming of coronavirus. So if the idea is that I can at least substitute for some of that income stream, hopefully, with people who are generous enough to sign up for the course. So okay, there's the rationale, and there's the honesty from me as well about why I'm doing it. It's partly to keep everybody entertained, but I do need to make a little bit of money. Okay, so what will the course entail? Well, I'm definitely going to be writing. As you probably noticed, my own skill set tends to revolve around the keyboard and the written word. I will be recording videos for you to watch. I will try to arrange live talks, live discussions, with chat room style thing. Try not to have too many people on that simultaneously, or I can imagine it'll get completely out of hand, but we'll try to do that, try to organise that. I've got the technology in mind. I've tested it, and it does seem to work. It's just a case of making sure that it works for big groups, or big-ish groups anyway. Anything else to say? The idea is that you'll get sort of weekly exercises, which you can pretty much finish at your own pace. I'm not insisting that everything's done in a week. But obviously if we can start a group together, it does help if a group can finish together. But it's pretty much in your own time. That's the great thing about e-learning. Anything else to say? I think that's probably pretty much all I want to cover on that. There'll be more online about that. I would give you the URL to follow, but I would have to write it down on a flashcard and then hold it in front of you, which I have completely forgotten to do. Okay, anything else to talk about? Well, the motorcycle action group, I have managed to lose the link. I was frantically looking for it a moment ago. You can tell I'm very organised at doing live videos. I wanted to talk about the work that they're doing. They've obviously gone into lockdown themselves. They're still out there working on our behalf, and they will be lobbying government on various issues. As you probably know, I've had quite a long association with writing the safety column for MAG over the years. I started doing it all the way back in 2002, so 18 years actually. The press release that came out just the other day, and what I'll do is I'll put a link up to it on the Facebook page when I finished chatting in a couple of minutes' time, actually was about the poor state of the road surfaces. And if I remember the figures correctly, there were 4 deaths last year, which are directly attributed to the poor road surface causing motorcyclists to crash. That's pretty grim number. There were a lot of injury accidents as well. I can't remember what the figure for that was, but they concluded that motorcyclists are something like 20% more likely, 20 times more likely to have a crash as a result of a poor road surface than a car driver. Now, we hear regularly about how dangerous motorcycling is and how motorcyclists are 20, 30, 40 times more likely to be killed or seriously injured than car drivers. But we are vulnerable out there for reasons that are more or less beyond our control. And the road surface is certainly something that causes issues. Now, casting my mind back a very, very long way, I was the proud owner of a 404 Honda, so that should give you a clue as to exactly when this was. It was probably about 1981. I'd been over to see a buddy of mine who lived in Rotherhithe at the time, south east central London, and I was on my way back to my flat, which was in Tooting, and I was somewhere in the general area of the Elephant and Castle when I came round the corner, and it was about 11:30 at night, so under street lighting. Came round the corner and I lost control of the motorcycle. Bike went down, I fell off. A couple of people who were walking came over to see if I was all right. Yeah, I was okay. I was wearing decent kit. The bike had crash bars on it, so that the crash bars had taken the impact. I'd done the usual thing. I'd lost a mirror, indicator and a brake lever or something, if I remember right. And a few more scratches on the bike that I didn't really want. But hey ho, I picked it up, bent everything straight that needed bending straight, brushed myself down and rode home. But what had I crashed on? Well, it was actually a part finished road repair. What had happened was that part of the road surface had been ground away and part had been relaid, but they were doing it in 3 tranches. So there was one bit near the pavement which had been completely relayed, and then there were 2 sections which were lower where the road surface had been ground away. And of course what that left was a steep edge, about a 3-inch edge. And what happened was that the bike got caught on that edge and went out of control, and then it threw me off. Now, why wasn't there a warning sign there? Well, I found out that there was. They were all on the pavement. There were cones on the pavement and a warning sign saying uneven road surface, which was also on the pavement. But everybody had come home from work, wanted to park their car, so they'd all lifted the cones out of the way and put the road sign on the pavement. So of course I came round the corner in the dark and hit this edge which was almost invisible. So I crashed. Now I was lucky to walk away from that one, but you know, it's maybe things have moved on slightly. Maybe people a little bit more careful about boarding things up and stopping people parking and finishing jobs as well, so they don't leave problems like that behind. But of course our road maintenance now is in an appalling state. The estimates are, I believe, that it's going to take about 10 years to repair the roads to get them back to a decent state, if the money was available to spend on road repairs in the first place, which of course it isn't. So roads are only going to get worse unless some money is diverted back to the roads. Now, given the current state of affairs, where that cash is likely to come from is anybody's guess. But you know, we all have to think about supporting action on something like the road surfaces. So yeah, hats off to MAG for pursuing this. We do need better road surfaces to ride on. Right, just looking at the time, we're coming up to 26 minutes past 11 according to my clock. So I'm going to wind up for the session today and remind you that what I'm going to do is come back on Friday, because it's Wednesday today, isn't it? So I've already lost track of the days. Everyone blends into another. I'll come back Friday. I'll talk again about some items of interest. I'll talk a little bit more about what I do as a motorcycle instructor. And one thing I'll be mentioning on Friday is that there is a new ECE standard for motorcycle safety helmets coming out, and I will just run over quickly what I can find out about what the standard actually entails, how it differs from the current ECE 205. The ECE 206 is the new standard, and what that means for us wearing our helmets on our heads, and whether or not it means we should be throwing all the old ones in the bin. Okay. Okay, I think that's probably pretty much all I want to say. Just try and bookmark my Facebook page if you're not already on it, facebook.com/survival skills. If you want some more reading material, if I move my head slightly to one side, you'll see my poster behind me, which has the Science of Being Seen presentation on it. That is at WordPress. scienceofbeingseen.wordpress.com. Go and have a look at that. It will tell you all about the visual perception problems that cause drivers to have issues sometimes when looking for traffic and missing motorcycles. It'll help explain that, help explain what you can do to be more visible when you get back on the bike. I will be running some talks again. I'll cover the Science of Being Seen talks. I'll probably run some dedicated ones of those. And last thing I want to say is, if anybody runs a club or a group and they want to carry on with their club meetings over the next few months, feel free to drop me a line, and I'm more than happy to do some kind of presentation online to your club, so we can at least keep the semblance of things motorcycling going as we would like. Drop me a line at my email address, which is info@survivalskills.co.uk, info@survivalskills.co.uk. Right, thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed my first ever live webcast appearance, and hope you've enjoyed your cup of tea with it. And I look forward to doing it again on Friday, and then, as I say, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays and Sundays too. Alright, so this is Kevin Williams here of Survival Skills Rider Training, signing off for the day. Thanks very much for your time here, and we'll see you all soon. Right, bye for now.